Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study of Plain and Simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. And we are in Isaiah chapter 45. And as I said, there are a few things that converge here that I just want to tackle in Isaiah 45. And last, it was the astounding prophecy of naming King Cyrus 170 years before he issued a decree. And he also said exactly what Cyrus would do, that he would rebuild and restore Jerusalem. So 170 years later, we see that coming to pass. You can see that in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, fulfill prophecy. And as I said before, that strengthens my faith when I see fulfilled prophecy. From our vantage point, we're able to take this book, which is full of prophecies, and chart where we are in prophecy. Now, unfortunately, there are those who misinterpret prophecy. So, for example, the second coming of Jesus. While we can certainly proclaim that Jesus will come back, it is foolish to attach a date to it. Every person who has attached a date to the return of Jesus has failed. Every one of them. Why? Because Jesus is not here. But the methods that they use is what's problematic. One, you're inserting information that's not there. Stick with the Bible. Stick with the plain reading of the Bible. And nowhere does it ever attach a date to the return of Jesus. And then, of course, there's the misinterpretations, and I'm not going to really get into them because I don't know how far I'm going to get in Isaiah 45 today. There's some things I do want to cover, but I want to just let me tie this up and move on. But when we talk about, like, for example, one, and I'm going to say the excellent Bible teacher, one I have great esteem for. He's since gone on to be with the Lord. But he prophesied that Jesus would come back. Jesus would come back. Get my chair here, right? Okay. He said that Jesus would come back in 1981. Now, other Bible teachers have said 1988, 1994. But one of the reasons why people misinterpret Scripture is that now, and this is kind of almost a timeless kind of statement, given the conflict that's going on in the Middle East right now. But when Israel became a nation in 1948, there were a couple of misapplications that people attached to that. One, they misattached that Israel is a nation of God. Now that's people have a hard time with that. The occupants of the land of Israel today. So here's my kind of perspective on that. One, are they the descendants of Abraham? That's the first question. Now, if they are the descendants of Abraham, then as a nation now, they are out of covenant with God. Paul said this, that they are enemies for the gospel's sake. And that's found in Romans 11, 9 and 11. Okay. So, and that's important because they are enemies for the gospel's sake. In other words, they're not in covenant relationship with God right now. So 1948 wasn't a fulfillment of prophecy. So therefore, you couldn't attach a time clock to that as that man of God foolishly did. Secondly, they say, well, the generation then that sees that happen. The Bible never said anything about the nation that sees Israel become a nation again. That that's a time clock. That's another thing. It never said that. And then thirdly, this notion that a generation is 40 years. Again, I haven't found anywhere in Scripture where that kind of timetable is ascribed to it. And that's why people can misinterpret Scripture, even the best of Bible teachers, because they're not, again, reading all of it and kind of comparing all of it, okay? So, uh, so that's why, but I mean, we can look at prophecy, fulfill prophecy, very specific fulfill prophecy. So if I was to say to locate us, where are we right now in prophecy, we would be between Daniel's 69 week and Daniel's 70 week. All right, so I'm going to move on because I can literally go on and on and on with that. And to do that, we probably do a comprehensive study in end times for that. And trust me, it'll be hours upon hours for that. All right, so I want to pick it up in Isaiah 45, verse 5, because when he says here, I am Yahweh and there is no other, there is no God but me, I will strengthen you, though you do not know me. So that now, the fact that God makes this declaration, he is God. Now, some people will say, they try to argue with that, and I told you about them before, the ex-Christians who are now atheists. And they argue with the concept, and they would say, well, God is not God. God is not love. God is, a monster. He's evil. Which my always retort is, upon what then do you base it? If you start your argument with God doesn't exist, then you're judging God's standard. Give me your standard, atheist. But I digress. But this notion that God is unfair, so they're going to say, well, God is going to send me to hell because I don't believe in him. Yeah, it's more than that. But okay, we can start with that. So right off, think about this. I am Yahweh, there is no other, there is no God but me. Okay, so right there, let me go and read another verse of scripture here. Where is it? Look at this. I'm back in chapter 44, and then verse 24, he says, I am Yahweh who made everything, who stretched out the heavens by myself, who alone spread out the earth. Now let me come zip down here. Now, so here's God's proclamation. I made the heavens and the earth. So here's the conflict. When you have scientists / atheists who say evolution created this, which I find hilarious, that natural selection created all of this. Okay. So when they say, well, God now is unfair to judge me because I don't believe in him, or because I have questions about him, as I said, it's more than that. I'll get to that in a moment. Well, let's start with the fact that you say God. One atheist even said, well, what if God really came out and says that the atheism is what I choose, and that you're violating me if you're following all of the other religions? I said, well, if he proves himself to be God and then say, I'm an atheist and follow atheism, well, if he's God, I will do that. I will follow him. Nonsensical, but okay. But you see, the point is, here is the very first building block, right? Step one, right? Right at the beginning. I am God. I made this. So right here, God declares he is God. He is the creator of everything, everything. So everything then has to play by his rules. Everything. So he goes, I am Yahweh, there is no other. There is no God but me. I will strengthen you, though you do not know me, so that all may know from the rising of the sun to the setting, there is no one but me. I am Yahweh, and there is no other God. So religiously, there is no other God. There are ideologies, there is religion, there are faith, but they're not real. Only God says, I am the only God. So there's no competition here. And when you see God speaking sometimes here, as we have saw, he is addressing the absurdity of the man-made God. God has demonstrated himself to show he is the creator. Okay? He showed that. He certainly revealed it to Israel. And I'm going to also, well, let's go. I'm going to read verse 7. He says, I form light and create darkness. I make success and create disasters. I, Yahweh, do all these things. Now, some people find this objectionable. Here's what I'm going to say. It's irrelevant because he's God. Now, some people may say, well, you think that if God kills babies and all that kind of stuff, that you're happy with that? My response is, if he's God, it's irrelevant. Just like what's going on in the Middle East. You have decision makers, leaders who are doing things. It doesn't matter if I agree or not agree with them. They're doing things. For example, Israel just told Gaza, get out because we're gonna, or you're gonna suffer the consequences, right? Get out because we're going to start an attack. Now you could say, you're telling me to leave my home. That is not fair. It's irrelevant. They are exercising power. That's my point. Doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. They are exercising power. So he says, verse 8, heaven sprinkles from above, and let the skies shower righteousness. Let the earth open up, so that salvation will sprout, and righteousness will spring up with it. I, Yahweh, have created all these things, righteousness and everything else. Verse 9, woe to the one who argue with his maker. One clay pot among many. Now you're going to see this other statement in Jeremiah, right? Does clay say to the one forming it, what are you making? Or does your work say, he has no hands? How absurd is the one who says to his father, what are you fathering? Or to his mother, what are you giving birth to? Now this is a very interesting statement here because, again, what is God saying? First and foremost, he's not talking about questioning either. Many people have questioned God, and God has answered them. For example, Job, right? He didn't want to once he kind of find out. In other words, it's easy to talk big when God is not around. And when God comes around and then you experience his presence. Now, none of the living today has experienced that kind of presence. Job experienced it, and Job says, yeah. In fact, let's back up for a moment because Job makes a very compelling story here about the sovereignty of God. So here you have Job in the book. You can go and read the book of Job. And ironically, the bulk of the book of Job is a discourse of conversation after the fact. Okay? So what the story is, Job was a righteous man who was really doing everything right, so that there was no reason for evil to come his way, let alone for God himself to be the one doing the evil, right? And so there's this conversation that Satan presents himself before the Lord and says, hey, God says, where you been? He says, I've been walking up in earth. And God says, have you considered my servant Job? And Satan says, yeah, I have, but you got a hedge around him. I bet you if you take that hedge around here, I curse you to your face. God said, okay, bet. do it. He said, but just don't kill him. And Job lost all of his wealth. He lost all of his goods. Okay? And it got destroyed. We know Satan destroyed it, but we also know God was the one who commissioned it. And God commissioned it to do what? To prove that Job would not lose his integrity. And that's what happened. Job did not lose his integrity. After all that was going on, Job said, blessed be the name of the Lord. The second discourse was, he said, okay, I took his good, but guess what? Take his health away. He curse you to your face. God says, go ahead, but just don't kill him. And then Satan afflicted Job with sores and stuff, and he still held to his integrity. Now the story is horrendous because he lost everything: his immense wealth, 10 children. He lost everything except his wife. Okay, everything, and he held on to his integrity. Now some people will say, "But God was unfair for doing that." And to that I would say, no, he wasn't unfair because he's God. Remember, he made everything. And he has the right as the sovereign to do whatever he wants with his creation. And that's something people have a hard time wrapping their head around. And that's why he used this example here of saying, hey, the potter can do what he wants with the clay. He's the potter. It's his clay. He can make whatever he wants. If he's making something, go, oh, I don't like that, and he throws it away. He has the right to do it. People have a hard time wrapping their head around it because they keep forgetting God is the one who made them in his image. God is the one that gave them thought, intelligence, reasoning. But he's also their God too. And people have a hard time saying, well, I just don't agree that God should have done that. Okay, but he's still God. Whether you understand it or not, whether you agree with it or not. Now, the end result of Job was that he was blessed twice as much. But some people will still take issue with the fact that, but why did God do it in the first place? The answer is, he wanted to. That's it. He wanted to. Why did he want it to? Doesn't say he wanted to. But the fact that he was God and he could. And that's the issue here with the sovereignty of God. Now, the question is, don't add stuff. Don't assume. A lot of times people think because of the hard times they're going with, that God must be the one causing the suffering. There is no scripture to back that up. However, the exception then was God decided to do it with Job. Why? Because he could. Now, the same thing we could say on a lesser scale, meaning the impact of the tragedy of Job, because he did lose his first family, like his children, and he lost all of his wealth. Well, but the other thing is that God could do that because guess what? God is God. And when you stop and you look at that story of Job, right there, that story of Job answers a lot. You may not be satisfied with the answer, but the takeaway is God is God. And just like you are sovereign in your home, right? All of the things that you purchased, you might have built your home. It's your home. You can do with it as you please. Just like as you're looking at here, I'm in a certain part of my home. If I punch a hole in the wall and leave it there, I don't have to fix it. I could damage the wall. Could the wall say, hey, fix me? No, I might go, no, I'm not going to fix you, right? Or maybe this wall may say, paint me another color. I might go, no, I'm not going to paint you a color. Why? You don't have the position to demand to me. This is my space. I can do what I will with my space. My Apple Pen, my mouse. If I take this thing and slam it, I could do that. It's mine. God created all, and he says, all is mine. And how he decides to do it is his will. And by the way, we live with this all the time. Don't act like we don't. Look, you have bosses. Even if you are independent wealthy, you still have to abide by laws. If I had it my way, everybody would yield to the right of way of me in driving, right? That's how selfish I would be. And so we need the laws. I don't like them because I don't like stopping at a stop sign. I don't like yielding to the right of way to you. I want you to yield to me. Then, but see, so my point is, we all have to obey something, and we may not like it. Pay taxes. Boy, don't we like that. Sometimes we don't like the decisions that the government made. We have no control over that. And just like decisions that were made that is going on with the conflict right now in the Middle East, the everyday common man doesn't have control over that. They simply have to what? Adapt, comply. So God is God. And the idea is that what are his promises? What did he promise us? But regardless of what he promised us, doesn't matter. He's still God. And that's the takeaway that he is declaring. He made it all, therefore it is his by which to do what he will. All right, guys, we by far are not through with this. So we'll pick this up in the next study. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you ever thought a comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. I will see you in the next study.